Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. It is Friday. We are here. We are live. It is going to be a fantastic morning of talking soccer here. Quick note, thank you to everybody who has stepped up and contributed to the show in the last couple of days. We've got a nice little bump. SoccerMorning.com. We do have a couple days left, and we're not really all that close to our goal. So it's just, I'll just remind you again. We also have a poll out for who you would like to co-host the show. I think this is courtesy of, who is that courtesy of? I need to get my details down because I saw the poll, but I haven't really been paying attention. I'll do the show with anybody. Yeah, Sisu Soccer on Twitter. That's our friend Antti, right? He sent me the Finland scarf. He would like to step up and support the show, but he doesn't want to co-host himself, so there's a poll out. Who would you like to step up? Who would you like to have sit in with me and co-host one program? Now, keep it within I guess there's choices. People can write names in, I'm sure, but keep it within reason. Like, I don't think we're going to get, I don't know, give me some, like, I don't think we're getting Landon Donovan to co-host a show with me. That would be amazing. It did work with Stu Holden. It did work with Hercules Gomez. I don't think it's going to work with Landon Donovan. Maybe. Can we start that campaign? Even if it's destined for failure, maybe we could start the campaign to get Landon Donovan to co-host Soccer Morning with me. Let's do that. Hit up Landon Donovan on Twitter, if he even uses Twitter anymore, except for marketing. By the way, I love Tim Howard. I love the guy. He's fantastic. But is there any chance at all that him joining Twitter isn't a marketing thing? I know I'm being super cynical here, but he just joined Twitter. We're a couple of weeks out from the World Cup. It's got to be about getting his image out there, right? Somebody said, some representation said to him, hey, Timmy, you know, it'd be good if you were on Twitter. That would help your profile. We'll get the World Cup coming up and get some of these opportunities out there for you. Start a Twitter account. So Timmy Howard's on Twitter now. I'm sure it'll be an interesting follow. That's not what I'm saying necessarily. All right, this show today, what we're doing on this show. Number one, we're going to review inside the U.S. men's national team march to Brazil, the couple of episodes that aired last night, 3 and 4, I think, of the series. Good stuff in those shows from the guys at 30 for 30, Jonathan Hawk, Roger Bennett, excellent stuff. I enjoyed both of them. I thought the first one maybe a little slow, and I'll put the question to you is whether or not those shows undersold the drama surrounding Donovan. I'll explain to you why I don't think that's true in a minute. But let me just point out, today's show will have Dave Zirin, Edge of Sports on Twitter, edgeofsports.com, sports editor at The Nation, a guy who's written a book on Brazil's Dance with the Devil, about the World Cup, about the fight for democracy in Brazil. Good, you know, that's one of my pet topics, the thing I want to talk about here as we get closer and closer to this tournament. How's this World Cup going down in Brazil? Let's get to the real element of it. Let's not talk about the shiny, perfect picture that FIFA wants to put out there, or that the government of Brazil wants to put out there. Let's talk about what's actually happening. So Dave Zirin in a couple of minutes. And then later on the show, 11 o'clock, Peter McVitie will join us to talk everything Dutch soccer, and that obviously includes preparations for the World Cup for the Netherlands. Also, maybe a couple of news and notes coming out of the Dutch league. I believe Aaron Johansson just signed an extension with AZ Alkmaar that'll keep him there through 2018, provided they don't sell him. Obviously, they could. He could move on to bigger and better things. But he's still really young, and that's one of the things I got out of that the documentary, the Inside the U.S. Men's National Team March to Brazil. Really long name. One of the things, I just forgot how young Aaron Johansson really is. Aaron Johansson, born in Mobile, Alabama. Now, this was one of the best parts. The highlights of those shows, I don't remember if it was episode 3 or episode 4. I think it was 4. Aaron Johansson talking about where he was born.
I was born in Mobile, Alabama. I can say Mobile, Alabama.
Doug, that was the highlight of the show for me. I do like the focus on the dual internationals. These are the guys that probably need more background filled out for people watching this program. Now, a lot of us are really engaged in this show, and we know who these guys are, and we know their background, and we know where they come from. We know why they're playing for the United States. But maybe there are some casual fans out there who only come around to soccer every 4 years, which I think is a bit of a canard, but it happens. There's certainly a group of people who pick up an American flag and wave it for the 2 weeks of the World Cup when the United States is certainly in it, and however long they extend after that. So maybe they needed that background. Maybe they needed to know who Aaron Johansson is, the Iceman, Bacon, whatever we're calling him. I really don't like the Bacon thing, by the way. I don't know why. I just don't. But maybe they needed that background. Maybe when he said, I can say Mobile, Alabama, maybe that connected them with him a little bit more. The other guy that got some focus, Mix Diskerud, who is just a fantastic. He's funny. They had the scene last night where it was Mix Diskerud and apparently Matt Beasler is his roommate, wherever they were at Stanford, I'm assuming, and they were watching the Champions League final. And it was awkward because I don't think either one of those guys was comfortable on camera necessarily, but Mix is trying to draw Beasler out a little bit. Beasler's not really giving him much. They're talking about whether or not Beasler is watching Ronaldo to learn how to defend him. I don't think that's something that you really can do. Maybe you watch game film for that. But watching a Champions League, Beasler said at one point, I'm watching as a fan. He's just a guy. Yeah, Trevor says it. Beasler is normal Joe 1.0. He's just a guy. He's a good soccer player. He's just a guy watching the Champions League final. Enjoyed that. So you had Mix Diskerud, excuse me. Just drop the Mikkel. It's all about this. Because if you want to say his name correctly, I'm sorry, you're going to have a difficult time.
I am Mikkel Morsen Paulsen Diskerud.
What did he just say? What did he just... I mean, that's his name, right?
I am Mikkel Morsen Paulsen Diskerud.
There's some stuff happening in there. Syllables and noises I can't begin to replicate. Mix Diskerud. This is my American accent.
I am Mikkel Morsen Paulsen Diskerud.
Yeah, Diskerud. I'm not going to try that. Not even going to attempt to do it the right way. We're just going to call him Mix Diskerud, and we're going to move on. We got the hair. The hair is fantastic. Absolutely love the hair. Mix Diskerud. And apparently he's the best ping pong player in the team. Table tennis, ping pong, whatever. He's the best ping pong player in the team because he plays with Swedes, and Swedes can play ping pong. That's what I got from that episode last night. Both of those episodes. And again, the question, we're going to get to Dave Zirin here in a couple of minutes, so we'll put this on hold, think about it, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Did they undersell the drama around Landon Donovan? We had Donovan talking to the press after his cut, talking to the press at LA Galaxy training. We had Jurgen Klinsmann addressing again the reasons for dropping Landon Donovan. I think they did what they could do within the context of that show, because remember, this is about camp. This is about the players who are there. That's a bubble. They're supposed to be following the team. They're not supposed to be following the one guy who got cut, who just so happens to be the biggest name in the history of American soccer. That's not the mandate of the show, even if there's a story there. Let's do it. Let's get a secondary documentary. Let's get another show that shows us everything that happened with Donovan after the fact. I don't know how interesting it would be, but there it is. All right. And yeah, a little bit of insight. I did like that as well. Trevor points out Michael Cameraman at one point talking to Jurgen Klinsmann about what the press is saying in relation to Donovan's cut. So you did get a little insight there. Very interesting stuff. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Dave Zirin, Edge of Sports, will join us. We'll talk about his book, about Brazil, about the protests, about everything coming up for this World Cup and what it means for the people of Brazil. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. Be right back.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
All right, on the line with me now, Dave Zirin, Edge of Sports, The Nation, author of Brazil's Dance with the Devil, a book that is specifically about everything happening around this World Cup. Dave, how are you, sir?
Oh, doing great. First, I do have to tell you, your last name's pronounced Zirin. But don't worry about it.
You could have done that, Dave.
My mom mispronounces it sometimes.
Dave, you could have done that before we came on the air. You sold me out.
This is better, though. This way, everybody gets to relish my pain of having my name mispronounced every day of my life.
Dave Zirin joins us on Soccer Morning. Dave.
It's okay. It's not even a real name. It was like some 10-syllable Russian name that got chopped at Ellis Island. So even when I correct people, it's kind of like, yeah, this is what my grandfather says my name is.
Okay, but your name is unique. You could be a Davis. It's boring. My life is boring because my last name is boring, Dave. All right, Dave.
If my last name was Davis, my son's name is Jacob, I would have named my son something like Lorenzo, Hardline, Davis.
Yeah,
like
I failed.
A simple last name means you get to go to town on the first name.
Yeah, I couldn't sell that to my wife, but that's a different story. All right, so Dave Zirin joins us, and we're talking about Brazil. We're talking about protests. We're talking about the people of Brazil, because Dave, the thing about this World Cup is that when FIFA puts on a show, when the government of a nation like Brazil gets involved, we sort of forget about all of these other people who are just pulled along for the ride, don't have a choice. It's not their decision to host the World Cup. And you wonder if they are being, and I'm sorry for the phrasing, done dirty here. And I suppose that's what we're asking.
No, absolutely. I mean, what's exceptional, people have to realize here, is that at all of these mega events, whether you're talking about the World Cup, whether you're talking about the Olympics, you always have these things happen, whether you're talking about Atlanta or Beijing. You have the militarization of public space. You have people displaced from their homes. You have horrific debt. And people suffer through this. People just literally suffer the disruption of this. Yet often they suffer without complaint, because, you have the fun of it, the nationalism, the pride. And when there have been protests in recent years, they've always happened afterwards, like when the bill comes due. What's exceptional in Brazil is that the first time, I don't know, since 1968, with Mexico City Olympics, you have mass protests in advance of the mega event. And that's what's raising all these questions to a hyper pitch. So what's happening in Brazil in terms of to the people is not unique. What's unique, generationally speaking, is the response.
I think for a lot of people, it is, I don't know if surprising is the right word. I think they are certainly, their eyebrows raised when they hear Brazil protesting ahead of the world's biggest football soccer tournament, the sport that we know is part of their national essence, part of their core, part of who they are. And maybe that gets people wondering a little bit more, Dave.
A lot of people have made that point, like, oh, it must be really bad if Brazilians are protesting soccer. But once again, this is an opportunity for us to peel back the onion a little bit and talk about this, because in writing this book, man, I spent a lot of time in Brazil. I talked to a lot of people. Obviously, with this newfangled thing called, the telephone, I've been able to also talk to people from the States in Brazil a great deal in preparing for the book. And there are two things that I think people have to realize. The first is it's a mistake to say all of Brazil is soccer mad. People speak about it sometimes as if it's a totality without realizing that Brazil is bigger than the continental United States. And just like you would never say, the United States is, say, college football mad, when there are huge differences between, say, Alabama and New Hampshire, there's similarities, like regional differences in terms of the soccer ardor of Brazil. That's the first thing. The second thing is people got to realize that there is a great deal of alienation of people from soccer in Brazil because of the professionalization of the sport, because of the fact that a lot of the great players, unlike in, say, Pele's day, they go play in Europe as opposed to sticking around and playing in the local teams there. There's a lack of public space to play, straight up. So all of these, just because of the real estate speculation that's there. So this sport, which is so closely identified with Brazil, I mean, there's alienation from soccer in Brazil. At the same time, these things are actually operating side by side together, and people fear that Brazilian soccer is just becoming another brand for foreign export and enjoyment.
It's interesting to see Pele, national treasure, Brazilian national treasure, but he has taken on this image. He is a known shill. He is a guy that if you pay him enough, he'll show up to your Subway opening or your dry cleaner's inauguration. And he's even said some things. Now, Dave, I wonder, because you've written about Pele speaking out about this tournament, about the money being used to build stadiums that will have no use afterwards. Is this Pele being honestly concerned for the people of Brazil, or can I be cynical and imagine he's really just posturing?
A couple of things about that. First, when you talk about Pele shilling, it reminds me of that Michael Jordan Saturday Night Live sketch from '91 where he was making fun of his own over commercialization. Do you remember that? And Jordan was like, "Do you like pornography?"
Yes.
Well, you haven't had pornography, so you have Michael Jordan pornography. And, Jordan was poking fun at himself. And, but it was Jordan, as much of a corporate pitch man as he is, he's historically been rather discerning in terms of what he pitches. Pele, not so much. The first athlete to ever trademark his own name. I will tell you straight up what I think. I think Pele is posturing out of his damn mind. Mm-hmm. I think Pele is somebody who is very intelligent. He's also someone who has invariably said the wrong thing politically when asked over the years, including just last year. What did he say? He said, hey, the protesters should wait until after the World Cup to make themselves heard. And he also said, instead of protesting, people should just get behind the national team. That would do a lot more good for the country. And, this was just, when you have a situation where the best players on Brazil's national team are siding with the protesters, and you have Pele telling them just to, be quiet and mind your business. It reminded a lot of folks of that famous line from the Brazilian soccer great politician Romário, who said Pele is a poet with his mouth closed. And so I think Pele is posturing out of his mind. And I think it also, though, says something very dramatic, that Pele even feels like he has to posture. Because in the past, he hasn't postured. He could have postured and said, oh, I hope the Brazilian dictatorship ends. He wouldn't say that. No. He could have postured and said, gee, I hope poverty in Brazil becomes less. He wouldn't say that either. Because he didn't want to anger the very dictatorship that he was so cozied up to. Yet here's a situation where he is saying something, and to me, it just speaks to the level of discontent and the crisis.
We're talking about these protests leading up to the tournament, and that being a unique circumstance. And certainly last year during the Confederations Cup, which is nowhere near the scope of the World Cup, doesn't get nearly as much attention, but was the Brazilian people's first opportunity to sort of be in the spotlight surrounding this World Cup. There were huge crowds. Estimates, the crazy estimates, like 1 million people out in the streets of Sao Paulo. We haven't seen anything like that yet, and yet I wonder if these protests happening now are more meaningful in a way, or I suppose, Dave, I should wonder if this indicates some sort of lack of organization, and whether that's going to hurt the people trying to get whatever message out they're trying to get.
That's a great question. There's no doubt the idea of having like 1 million people in the streets, that might be a tough thing to pull off because a couple of reasons. One, there's a lot of fear about violence, whether from the police, whether from people who are plants by the police inside the protests, or whether just from hardcore anarchists who would be attempting to try to actually provoke violence. People on the Brazilian left debate about how much of that is police, right, and how much of that is people like anarchists and whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you're just somebody who wants to demonstrate and you're scared there's going to be violence, they don't really care about who's starting it. You just don't want to be there for the violence. There's also a lot of fears because, Brazil is trying to pass a law right now that says attending a demonstration during the World Cup would be akin to terrorism. So, there's a lot of fear about that level of backlash as well. But that being said, one, I think that makes the protests that we're seeing more meaningful because of what people are risking. And two, it speaks to the fact that right now there's a different quality of protests as well. because there are more strikes and land occupations now than a year ago. So maybe you don't have the big numbers, but you do have this 10,000 person occupation at this huge plot of land next to Corinthians Stadium in Sao Paulo. You do have people resisting getting removed from their homes. You do have the teachers and the bus drivers going on strike, the police going on strike, the firefighters going on strike, and all of them saying, we want FIFA quality wages, like using that expression. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's kind of deep. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, so it might not be a million people, but there's a depth to what's happening.
Talking to Dave Zirin, author of Brazil's Dance with the Devil, the World Cup, the Olympics, and the Fight for Democracy. I mean, the Olympics kind of get lost in this. They're going to have the World Cup this year, and then 2 years from now, Rio hosts the Olympics. This is going to drag out. This is going to be a much longer movement than just a sort of flash in the pan 2013, 2014 kind of thing. And so, while I don't have a lot of time left with you, Dave, I guess I got to wrap this up with a question of whether or not this will affect any change. I mean, Dilma has not actually said anything that would indicate the government's listening to these people. And you just mentioned trying to pass a law that would make it a crime to protest, an act of terrorism to protest.
Well, there are some things happening that aren't getting a lot of publicity here in the States. Like there are carrots along with the sticks. You just mentioned the sticks, and the sticks are getting a lot of international publicity. You know, the crackdown, the militarization, they're going to have drone airplanes flying overhead. And I think they're putting that out internationally. So people feel, wealthy tourists feel safe going to Brazil to spend their money. But on the ground in Brazil, the carrots are coming out too. Like I told you about that occupation next to Corinthians Stadium. They're in negotiations with the landless peasants movement about turning that into public housing. They're offering more money now and closer relocations for people they're trying to get out of the favelas, which still stinks that they're going to make them move. But if they're at least getting to some decent dough and a nearby location so their lives aren't overly disrupted, that's certainly better than just getting kicked out at gunpoint and saying, be gone with you. So there's some stuff happening on the ground. There's efforts to divide the movement. There's efforts to pay some people off. And you hope when this is all said and done that it'll be in a better place. But that's not true, because what's coming up next is the 2016 Olympics in Rio. And I mean, we're going to live through this. It's going to be more Rio-centric and less national, but we'll be having the same conversation in a couple of years.
Dave Zirin, author of a book on Brazil and the World Cup and the protest movement, and certainly the discontent of the people with the government of Brazil over not just putting together this tournament, a lot of other things, social ills that are affecting Brazil. We've been tracking them for a while here. Go get the book. edgeofsports.com is big link right there, picture of the cover. You can buy the book at Dave's website. Follow him on Twitter, Edge of Sports as well. Appreciate your time, Dave. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. There goes Dave Zirin. Good stuff from him. I got his name wrong. He made fun of me for it. This is how it goes. I was made fun of on my own show. I feel like I need to... Never mind. No, not a big deal at all. Phone lines open, 347-756-6276. We can take phone calls here. We've got at least half an hour, a little bit more. So we grab Peter McVitie to talk about Holland and their World Cup preparation. It's going to be an interesting World Cup for Holland, certainly. They are a defending finalist. They play Spain in this World Cup. They're in Spain's group in this World Cup. So we get that rematch, that World Cup final rematch. Is this team anywhere close to another World Cup finals appearance? And again, the history of the Dutch in this tournament. Will they get over that hump and win a title? Can this be it? I don't think anybody out there really believes that this Dutch team is strong enough to go win a world championship. It's possible that they could surprise some people. When you make your list of favorites, you put Brazil on it, you put Argentina on it, you put Germany on it, you put Italy on it because they're always competitive, good team, solid team. Maybe you put France on it because they have the talent to pull it off. You obviously put Spain on it. They're defending champions. They've won every major tournament they played in like the last 8 years? Am I wrong about that? 6 years? 8 years? Something like that. So Peter McVitie will give us some insight there. Should be a good conversation. All right, let's go to the phones. 516, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason, it's Steve. How are you?
Hey, Steve.
I just wanted to ask if we saw the Goldman Sachs report for the economics of the World Cup.
You know what? People have been sending this to me. It is open on a tab on my I'm looking at it right now. GoldmanSachs.com, Our Thinking, Outlook, World Cup, Economics, blah, blah, blah. I have not had a chance to really go through this thing. It is long. It is in depth.
It's a 67-page document that Goldman Sachs puts out.
I don't have time to read 67 pages, Steve.
Well, I'll give you an overview to everyone else who's listening as well. So it's a big overview. Goldman Sachs is a large bank. They've been putting this economics report out. The last 5 World Cups is their 5th one. And it basically goes through every team, what their economic situation is, the odds for winning the World Cup and all this. And, of course, Brazil is heavily, heavily favored.
Sure.
So it's a great document if you have the time to read through it. But if you even just want to skim, it's still a good there's a lot of economics charts in there, basically. It's things you don't think about why a team would possibly win or possibly lose, what the conditions are, and it's a great article.
All right, it's not an article; it's a document. It's 67 pages. It's a report. It's long. It's involved. You got to put some time into this. I mean, I got so much stuff to read. I've got to dive in fully into James Montague's book 31-0 about the minnows around the world because James is a fantastic writer, and I want to read that. But I also got to read this. But I also got to read all of these other stories about the World Cup. I got to read previews. I've got, there's just so much stuff. I have to read this story about how Spain has been ordered to make a new white kit for the World Cup because their red shirts clash too much with Holland's blue. What is happening? Steve, you got anything else, man?
That's it, man.
I appreciate the phone call. 347-756-6276. If I miss you, call back. I will get to you, I promise, unless we just get slammed with phone calls and then you're going to be taking your fate into your own hands. Rick in Philly, what's up?
Hey, Jason. First off, I got to say, if Aaron Johansson had talked like that when he first decided on the U.S. over Iceland, we could have skipped months of "Is he a real American?" talk.
I suppose we could have. Are you asking me to play the drop again? Is that what you're asking me to do?
Yeah, sure.
I was born in Mobile, Alabama. I can say Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, you know what? I think you make a good point, Rick. Before you go on there, because obviously on this show we covered that story pretty in depth. We obviously talked to the president of the Icelandic Football Association, Mr. Torstensson, and there was a lot of controversy over whether or not it was right for a player like Aaron Johansson to choose the country of his birth over the country where he was raised and his parents are from, and that made him the player that he is. And maybe if we had a little bit more of a personal understanding of who these guys are. But then again, maybe Aaron wasn't nearly as comfortable with this sort of thing as he is now.
No, I mean, it's entirely true. And I think that's why a series like this is so enlightening. And, we don't get that sort of coverage necessarily, or at least we don't get it from anyone other than U.S. soccer, where we get these stories about Mix and about Johansson and about the Germans. You're getting it now, and it's really it's illuminating to see these guys because you read about them and you see them play, but it's really illuminating to see a little bit of their lives. It's I did not have high hopes for the series when it was announced, but I've really been impressed.
Well, I mean, look, there's only so far you can go. Clearly, there are going to be moments that they can't get on tape. They're going to have to concoct some of these. I mean, obviously, Matt Besler and Mix Diskerud laying on their bed in their room watching the Champions League final is they may have done that, but to put a camera in there changes the dynamic significantly. And you're not really going to get who they are. I don't know that any of the one thing I'll say about this team is there aren't really any major outgoing personalities. I mean, this has kind of been true of American soccer for some time, and we don't have a Wijnaldum in this team. I can't think of anybody who sort of jumps off the screen. Everybody is very nice, and you like them as people, but they're not big personalities, Rick.
No, it's absolutely true. And even the people with compelling stories, I mean, like Clint Dempsey's story is a compelling story, but he's not the most outgoing guy. He's not the guy that's going to put himself out there necessarily.
No.
What I find interesting to see is the interaction. When not during the interviews, but during just when they're filming, who's sitting with who when Klinsmann walks into the room. The fact that Mix and Jozy are the ones playing table tennis when Klinsmann walks in, I think that's hilarious considering the sort of players they are.
Well, you know what I like too, and to go back to that scene of Besler and Diskerud watching the Champions League final, they intercut that with 3 German American players sitting at a bar watching the game, or that
one of whom shouldn't have been old enough to sit.
Well, I mean, that was the implication, right? That was what you were, as a viewer, you were supposed to assume that they were watching the same game that Beasler and Diskerud were watching. Now, I found it interesting, and I'm not saying that there was any motivation on the part of the filmmakers.
There was a click there or something.
It certainly looked like they were trying to paint that. Did it not? That's what it looked like to me.
I got when I was watching, yeah.
Now, do you think Bradley was with them, Trevor says. Okay, I didn't notice Michael Bradley. If he was with them, it changes the dynamic a little bit. But I did think that it looked to me, it did jump off the screen as an attempt to paint that little group as separate somehow. Not that they had a bunch of American players, non-German extraction, watching the Champions League together. So I don't know how far that goes. And then again, like we're sort of saying, not that they're contriving drama, but they are going to squeeze as much out of it as they can.
Yeah, my first thought there was, that they were trying to explain that there might be clicks and that sort of thing. But then I thought about the fact that was the storyline they were drawing, was that these guys existed. So you could have had the American-born American players at the other end of the bar. They're just not going to be in the picture. So that, when I'm thinking about it after the fact, it could just be because those were the players they were focusing on in previous episodes. So of course they're the ones they're going to shoot.
Yeah, I don't know. I give those filmmakers a little bit more credit than that. They know how to send a message through images.
Oh no, they absolutely do. It reminds me back when HBO was doing Hard Knocks, the original series of Hard Knocks. They did the Baltimore Ravens one year, and the way that they showed Tony Saragusa, he was injured at some point during the camp, and the way they set it up, it was almost like Final Destination. They kept showing these shots of him, almost getting injured, and almost getting injured, and almost getting injured. Right. You knew it was coming. They're very cunning the way they handle this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, I'm not saying that there is a fundamental problem in this team. And, not being in the camp, it would be unfair for me to judge that. If we get reports that, hey, so-and-so is upset about something, or Julian Green's inclusion is causing a rift, and it's a legitimate report, and there's multiple sources, then maybe we'll talk about it. But it's just that, again, this is more about the filmmaking process. And it's as good as it's good, flat out, period, without equivocation. But it's also as good as we're going to get, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And moving on real quick, I know you're going to talk to Peter about this, but one of the things that struck me when Donovan was left off the roster, and it popped back into my head, Martin Stecklenburg. Mm-hmm. There are only like 4 players on the Dutch team. I think it's 4 now that Van der Vaart isn't going to be there. On the Dutch team here, who were playing in the final 4 years ago, which is remarkable. But Martin Stecklenburg went from starting the World Cup final in 2010 to not even making the bench for Fulham when they knew they were going to be relegated on the final day of the Premier League.
It's amazing how your fortunes can change. And the one other thing, and you can hang on for this if you want to, Rick, I don't know. Sure. The other thing from the episodes that we saw last night was, and people are calling it the Top Gun beach volleyball scene, because really, how else can you look at it? A bunch of shirtless guys playing volleyball. I mean, those little team building moments, again, I'm not saying that's not contrived. I'm sure they went out to play some beach volleyball and turned it into, foot volleyball or foot volley, whatever they call it. But I don't know that we're getting anything out of those moments, Rick.
I don't know. I think that's sort of like the People magazine moments. I mean, as much as you or I would be just as happy with a series done in the style of like Real Sports or something like that, this is ESPN, and they are selling to those World Cup and Euros, fans. Yeah. I tweeted something earlier. It's the equivalent to people who go to church on Christmas and Easter. Yeah. You have to give them that added element to keep them coming back every week. Yep. I was just disappointed they didn't play Hanging with the Boys.
Okay. That actually transitions me. Thanks for the phone call, Rick. I'll clear it out.
Thank you.
347-756-6276 is your phone number. I'm going to clear that out. Rick, although he gives me the perfect segue into something else I wanted to touch on this morning, and that's the mainstream exposure that this team is going to get in the American media leading up to their departure for Brazil. They're in New York. They've got a game scheduled at Red Bull Arena on Sunday against Turkey. We can talk a little bit about that game, what you expect from it. Being 2 days out makes it sort of an odd mental exercise to preview it, but we certainly can. But this is the thing. I watched Howard, Bradley, and Guzan on Good Morning America this morning. They were there as part of the celebration. I don't know. Was this a U.S. men's national team thing? Because 50 Cent was there. 50 Cent was doing some music. 50 Cent was being interviewed every 5 minutes. You had these three guys. And again, no personalities no overwhelming personalities, no big personalities. Tim Howard presents himself well. I think he's good on camera. I think he's eloquent. I think he's a smart guy. He's fine. We know Michael Bradley's a smart guy, but that's just not his scene. Maybe Brad Guzan, but he's a backup goalkeeper. He's not a star on this team yet. And then they go through the, hey, Michael, can you show us your skills routine? Which is when the mainstream media brings in the soccer guy. What does the soccer guy have to do every time? He's got to juggle the ball. He's got to do something with the ball. He's got to have a little fun with the ball. Michael Bradley didn't look like he wanted anything to do with it, but he did it dutifully because this is the job when you're building up momentum towards the World Cup. And these guys are not just players who get to focus on what's happening on the field and how they're interacting and training and getting the kinks worked out so that when they step on the field against Ghana, everything goes the way they want it to. They're also public figures who have to help grow the sport in whatever way is deemed necessary. I thought they did fine. And I hope that soccer fans, and if you're listening to this show, you're a pretty passionate soccer fan, I hope you don't let that stuff bother you. I mean, I saw Simon Borg on Twitter kind of complaining about the tricks, about doing the juggling, and when will they stop asking soccer players to do it? Dave Letterman has quarterbacks throw footballs on his show all the time. This happens. This is not unique to soccer. This is something that athletes are required to do every time they do this stuff. I mean, yeah, you might have a late night appearance for a basketball player and all he does is talk, but how many times have you seen some sort of cutaway skit or something where the player's got to go through the motions of doing his sport for the purposes of publicizing himself or publicizing his league or publicizing his team or publicizing, in the case of the USA basketball team, they do this stuff too for that. So this is not unique. This is not something you should worry about. And again, this isn't really for you anyway. And by the way, congratulations to the American Outlaws for completely drowning out the interviews with those three guys. And I mean that, honestly. Good job. Your job is to be loud, support your guys. And they went out there and they were loud and they supported their guys. And you couldn't hear a damn thing coming out of the mouth of Bradley or Howard or Guzan. So congratulations to those guys. Phone number 347-756-6276. We can keep talking about this. Okay, we can keep talking about the mainstream elements getting interested in soccer for this brief window that they do every 4 years, and how they're going to treat it, and how, as a soccer person, it's going to piss you off and annoy you. I'm the one that tweeted this morning that whoever the Good Morning America host was that was interviewing these guys on stage said the World Soccer Cup is coming up. And look, I groaned. It was annoying. Should at least have the correct verbiage when you put these guys on camera and you talk about their sport. But it doesn't really bother me. And I'll tell you why. We've talked about this on this show too. This is not new. This is not a new message from me. Don't worry about that stuff. It's not going to affect the game is fine. Let's just say it that way. The game is fine, not going anywhere.
Good morning, America.
Is it going to hurt you? Turn on the show, Vince. I can hear myself coming through your connection.
Oh, my bad.
Okay. Well, I ruined your intro. First time you maybe ever called the show and didn't say, "Oh, hey, Jason," first.
Oh, it's all right, Jason.
Sorry. What's up, Vince?
Dude, I wanted to talk some Jozy with you if you're interested.
Okay. What are we going to be talking about with Jozy?
I'm worried, Jason, to put it frank.
You're worried? What, that he's going to go to the World Cup and fail?
Not necessarily that. I mean, the U.S. as a whole can go to the World Cup and fail, Jason. Like, it's
sure, possible.
So I'm not resting the chances on Jozy Altidore. I just wonder, like, I don't think he thinks this way, but it definitely feels like Klinsmann is set on using Jozy as his number one, as his target man, no matter what happens, no matter how poorly he plays. And, fair enough, in that system, there's no one like him. Nobody else can replicate that big body thing. But and at the same time, I'll tell you that that's not necessarily Jozy's best attribute. I don't. We've seen with Sunderland when they tried to make him that target man, it completely backfired on them. But anyhow, I just worry that, you know, Jozy's a young man. He's only 25, so this isn't his last merry-go-round. He's going to continue on with the program. But like the running narrative, every time Jozy comes into camp since he joined Sunderland, so since September, which would have been not the Mexico qualifier, but probably after that in October when they were finishing up, was, oh, we have to get Jozy's confidence up. Oh, he has no confidence. We have to get it up. We have to make him feel good about himself every you know. And that's the case every time the U.S. comes for camp, and that's not a good thing. You can't go in with your number one needing his confidence to be rebuilt, because that's just a recipe for disaster, because you need a guy like him to lead the line with confidence, with poise. And if you're trying to make him feel better, like we saw when, you know, John Champion and Taylor Twellman are pointing it out, where, oh, Jozy really needs a goal. He really needs to get back on his feet. I don't want that to be the case going after the World Cup, going into the Gold Cup, and then going into the 2018 cycle, where Jozy's the number one undisputed, and he's having that yo-yo career. I'm worried that guys who may be doing a better job, like an Agudelo or a Johansson or a Boyd, are, even no matter how good they are for their clubs, Jozy still gets that number one position, even if he continues to, like I said, this yo-yo of his career.
There's certainly an argument that says that Jozy Altidore's play should be in jeopardy, and that there are guys who could replace him, even if they don't necessarily do the exact same things that Jozy is asked to do in this system. And you could argue, I mean, this is why it was a mild surprise to see Terrence Boyd left off the roster. By the way, Jozy Altidore's 24. Don't age the man quite so quickly there, Vince. But it's fine. This is why Boyd not being on the roster was a mild surprise. I had Wondolowski on because I had a gut feeling that Klinsmann likes Wando's attitude. He's been talking about it a lot recently. Oh, he's a giver. He does all of these things. He gives his all no matter what. For some reason, it's weird. Klinsmann seems to value your attitude sometimes even over your abilities. And that would indicate to me that Jozy Altidore's attitude, at least when it comes to the U.S. national team, has never wavered. Because if it had, you could only imagine that Klinsmann would be quick to drop him. Oh, Jozy's not giving enough. Jozy needs to do better in training. Jozy doesn't bring enough commitment to the team. Those kind of things.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we haven't heard anything about Jozy being any issue in camp or, like, you know, being depressed. He seems to be in high spirits whenever he's with the team. But like, that's just my point, because I know, like, a lot of teams don't necessarily have that choice. Like for Portugal, for example, their strikers are probably the worst players on their team, and that's just a product of them not being able to, or not having produced anybody.
Well, okay, so good. Vince, what we're boiling this down to is whether or not you believe that the United States is better with either Aaron Johansson on the field, Terrence Boyd on the field, Chris Wondolowski as a starter. I mean, that's what we're getting down to here, or even Juan Agudelo if you want to go off the roster again.
Yeah, I believe that. The issue is we haven't seen that. We haven't been given the opportunity. Anytime there's a friendly in Europe, Jozy's the guy starting. I would have liked to see against Ukraine maybe Terrence Boyd get that opportunity, or Juan Agudelo to get that opportunity. But Klinsmann set in his ways. He always wants Jozy to start. So while Terrence or Agudelo had a good start, because I believe in March at that point, Terrence Boyd had only gotten started on his tear. But I believe Agudelo was coming off a goal, strong showing for Utrecht, while Jozy was with the U21s at Sunderland. I was hoping, okay, we'll give Agudelo a chance to start and see how he does. But nope, Jozy's still in there, and that's just the thing. I hope, and I do want to see Dempsey and Wando hopefully starting against Turkey, because I thought they did very well with each other against Mexico, based on the Dempsey not being that usual striker. He likes being more of that second guy, and then Wando being Wando. And I hope to see that, because if let's say Jozy doesn't improve during the camp, and then you go into the World Cup and he goes against Ghana, the commentators brought up a very good point. Is Jozy going to be able to bully the likes of Per Mertesacker and Matt Hummels, Jonathan Mensah, and Pepe? I don't know. And maybe the U.S. game shouldn't be to bully these defenders.
If we're talking about physical strength, I have no doubt that Jozy will be fine against those players. I mean, the question is with Jozy Altidore is always, is his first touch there? Is he making the right decisions when he takes the ball? Is he winning balls in the air? Because I don't think Jozy wins nearly enough 50-50 balls in the air at that position. Not that you really want to be playing that way, and I'm sure Klinsmann would prefer fewer balls in the air to Jozy Altidore, but that's obviously a part of the game that matters. I don't think that physically he's going to have any problem, but it's that other element of it. And again, you think about the way the United States plays and the way Klinsmann has set them out, and even if you say, well, maybe Dempsey and Wondolowski together, or let's consider playing a different striker tandem, even if they might present more danger with the ball in the box, the issue is getting the ball into the box, is getting into the final third with numbers and coming at the back line of the opponent, because that's what Jozy's hold-up play allows you to do. If he brings the ball down and he can pass the ball off to a midfielder coming at a defense, makes it way more difficult than a static midfield.
I guess, but I mean, we're gonna get to see a much bigger test on Sunday against Turkey.
Yes, we will.
And I don't know if you mentioned it, Jason, but Turkey, off that 2-0 victory over Honduras. I just gotta say, and I'll leave you after this. Andy Nahar, man, he's something else. That kid's gonna be something special.
I know. I saw you on Twitter calling him potentially the best player in CONCACAF by 2018. That's a bold statement, Vince.
I believe it at 100%. He's a boy amongst men, and he doesn't look out of place.
All right. I mean, I'd have to think about guys who are in the, say, 22-year-old range right now who may develop into that player. Because in this region, I mean, there's a couple. Joel Campbell, maybe a guy on that level. In terms of Americans, I mean, there's a couple of guys that need to do a lot of catching up, I suppose.
We'll see, Jason.
I appreciate the phone call, Vince. Thanks a lot, man.
Take care, Jason.
Vince in Canada, the Great White North, calling in. Appreciate that. As always, 347-756-6276. In about 12 minutes, Peter McVitie will join us. He is our Dutch football expert. We will talk about Holland in this particular World Cup. We'll talk about the turnover that Rick mentioned when he called just a little while ago in this team and what this tournament bodes for them. You look at that group, and we talk about the United States in Group G, that being the group of death. And yes, Australia is not a good team, but in this particular group, Spain, Netherlands, Chile, that's some heavy competition for those top two spots. Maybe not all four of maybe Australia's not really a candidate to progress. It would be a shock of shocks to see that happen. But those other three teams battling it out and potentially, Australia playing a spoiler role will be very, very interesting in this tournament. Again, opening game for the Netherlands against Spain in Salvador on June 13th. This is almost sort of like the way the NFL does it, where you get like a rematch from the playoffs the previous year. I think it's usually maybe not the Super Bowl rematch, but a conference championship rematch or something. Like that's your first game. So it's like they planned it this way. Imagine, I don't know, did FIFA plan it this way? And did FIFA put these two teams in the same group because they don't want to replicate the 2010 final? Nobody wants to see that happen again, that 2010 final. So painful. 347-756-6276 is your phone number. I mentioned this off the cuff, talking about all this stuff out there to read, all this information to process. And really do yourself a favor. If you are anything like me and you try to see and understand and look at a little bit of everything, every now and then stop yourself. Don't end up with 30 tabs open and not read any of them. Stop yourself when you get to maybe 10 or 12 and actually go in and read fully some of those pieces and stories that you've got popped up. This is what I end up doing on Twitter. I see something interesting. Somebody tweets something. Somebody I respect. Somebody I like. Somebody whose opinion I trust tweets something. I click the link, or it's news that I'm interested in. I click the link. I pop up the tab on my browser, and then I go back and I'm going back to Twitter and looking at more links or clicking more things. I've got I end up with, again, 30 tabs open, and I haven't read any of them. The Goldman Sachs report has been sitting on my desk on my browser for 3-4 days at this point. And yeah, I don't have time to read 67 pages. I don't think many of us do, at least in one sitting, that kind of thing. I'll read a book. I don't know if I'm going to read a Goldman Sachs report, but I should look at it. I should give it an in-depth read. All right. In the next 10 minutes between now and when Peter McVitie joins us, let's talk a little lower division soccer in the United States. Let's talk about some interesting things happening in Pensacola, Florida, where they had an NPSL team, that's the National Premier Soccer League, called Pensacola City FC. It's an amateur league. NPSL is an amateur league, just like the PDL. It's on that level. It's equivalent to the PDL. PDL and NPSL occupy the same level on the American pyramid, which doesn't really exist, the fourth level. Pensacola City FC disappeared in the last day or 2 days. Disappeared. Gone. Shut down the Twitter account, shut down the Facebook page. And the latest information I have is that the players from Pensacola City FC have been kicked out of their apartments, told they have to vacate them by the end of the month. Guess what? There's 1 day left in the month, and given no way to get back home. In some cases, you have international players in this mix. It's a troubling situation. We'll get into it in a minute. 915, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason. This is Dave from El Paso. How you doing?
Hey, Dave. What's going on?
Hey, just a quick question for you. And I don't know if this has been brought up before, but is there any concern with this the U.S. National team not playing with the bazooka ball during team games and warm-ups and things like that?
It's I've seen a couple people mention it. It is odd. I mean, look, the national team has a Nike contract. We all know that. We all know they're going to sell lots of Nike gear. People are buying the jerseys. It's happening. They're fine on that front. I don't know why they couldn't make an exception and play with the bazooka. And if this is Nike saying this, shame on Nike. Because you're hurting the preparation. Balls are different. They really are. Now, some people say, "Oh, that's no big deal. It's just a ball." The way that the way the balls are made now, the technology that goes into them, everything that Adidas and Nike and everybody else puts into these products means that there are some significant differences. And I've even seen some reports from some teams that have played friendlies recently that have said this ball, the bazooka, the Adidas official ball for the World Cup, it wobbles. It flies differently. It's going to be an interesting ball to see on the field in Brazil. Why not give your players an opportunity to? Now, I know they've been training with it. Well, why not in the game, in the intensity of a game? You're not going to replicate the World Cup, but you're going to get as close as you can in these friendlies. Play with the right ball.
Right. Well, I mean, and just because of what had happened with the Jubilani in South Africa and all the stink about that ball, I just, like you said, to have the U.S. team as prepared as possible, might as well be playing with the right ball from the get-go. Anyways, So thanks. I appreciate you taking my call.
No problem, David. I appreciate the phone call. Interesting little bit on the ball in the United States preparing for the World Cup with the wrong ball in the game. They're using the wrong ball against Azerbaijan. Use the right ball. All right, back to this Pensacola City FC story. Look, this is about Pensacola City FC specifically. This is about the disappearance of this team with no notice. There's 3 or 4 games into their season, by the way. It's not like this is the off season for this team. They play in the Southeast Division of the NPSL, or they did. Again, they're gone. Period. End of story. Goodbye. There's a supporters group, the Gulf Coast Armada, who's been tweeting about this, using lots of curse words, as is the right to do. They don't know what happened. All we know at this point, I'm going to try to recreate the timeline as best I understand it, because I do think that this is endemic. This shows a little bit about how lower division soccer sometimes works in the United States. And yes, this is an amateur team, so it doesn't rise to the level of a pro outfit. These players weren't getting paid, so it's a little different. But when you have these fly-by-night operations, it's very difficult to imagine building any sort of real passion for the game, fervor, support. I mean, on the off chance that one day we have an opportunity for the 4th tier to move up to the 3rd tier, to the 2nd tier, the 1st tier. You got to have some roots that stick around and some roots that stay where they're placed. I mean, they didn't have time to grow here. The timeline is this. On the 26th of May, so 4 days ago, Pensacola City FC posted to their webpage, headline, Pensacola City FC is boycotting the city of Pensacola. This is amazing. The city of Pensacola has just informed PCFC that Legion Field will be undergoing aeration. Therefore, the city has transplanted us to McGee Field on MLK Drive. First off, we have no issue with moving. McGee Field was nicely constructed, and we wouldn't have felt privileged to play on. We would have felt privileged to play on that field, except we can't. The city says we're not allowed to move the removable baseball fences that go well to cover half of our playing surface, and I do not think the neighbors behind the goals would appreciate us hitting their houses for 2 hours every day. As the fence is low and there are no nets, as the fence is low and there are no nets. We are only allowed to use 40 by 60 yard playing surface. Anyone who has half a brain knows soccer is not played that way. Here's the good part. This is the type of idiocy we have all come to hate about the city of Pensacola. And this is good. As of this moment, I regrettable have made a decision to boycott businesses in the city limits. My money given to those businesses get sent to the city in form of taxes and license fees. We will not support a dysfunctional city like Pensacola anymore. I am sorry to each business owner, as you are all great people trying to make a difference, but I will no longer indirectly support this city. This isn't signed. There's a lot of first person here. I don't know who the hell this guy is that wrote this. Again, the crime here is that there was a fan group, that there was a group of people who were interested in supporting this team, despite the fact that it's fourth tier, that it's amateur soccer, and they're left in the lurch. But worse is the team disappearing, giving no support to their players, leaving them stranded in a place that is not their home. I mean, the local kids, fine. They're fine, whatever. But for anybody who came to Pensacola to play NPSL soccer, to improve their career, to improve their abilities, to get a start on their career, to be left stranded there with no way to get home, no idea of where to go, who to turn to, no money in most cases, no money certainly to make the move, and now they have to go look for another team. It's not good. It's not good. Our friend Abram Chamberlain is from down there, lives down there, and has been covering this. Follow him on Twitter, Mind of Abram. Sure, he'll have some thoughts that he can share with you if you are interested in this story. Again, I think this is kind of in microcosm one of the larger issues that affects American soccer at the lower levels. We can talk about the whys and hows if you want to, but the fact that it keeps happening is troubling. And it's I don't know, is there a fix? Is there a way to make it? So, and again, this is NPSL. This isn't big time soccer. We all know that. But just it's still troubling to have teams come and go as quickly as they do in this country sometimes. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, Peter McVitie will join us. We'll talk all things Holland. World Cup coming up. How will the Dutch do? Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. Support the show. Thank you very much.
I turn my camera on. I cut my fingers on the way. they lie, y'all. Here comes my boy.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now by our friend Peter McVitie, Dutch football expert. We'll bring him on to talk about the Eredivisie, and in this case, with the World Cup coming, we have to talk about the Dutch national team. Peter, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you.
Are you excited for the World Cup, Peter? You jazzed?
I am. I'm really looking forward to it. Very much.
It should be a good show. We have all of this other, the undercurrent of everything happening in Brazil, but the football should be excellent. And one of the things we have to look forward to is this rematch of the 2010 final right out of the gates with this group, Spain, the Netherlands, Chile, and Australia, all together in Group B. And we can certainly talk about the Dutch preparations, but how important is that game, I suppose? Because you imagine that both of these teams are favorites to get out of the group, but they face each other in that first game, and we all have memories of that final. Yeah,
it's massive. It's a chance for revenge for Holland, and a bit of redemption as well, because after the last World Cup, they were seen as a dirty team, a bit of a negative team, who fought hard and weren't as pretty or as beautiful as we're used to seeing from Holland. So now with Louis van Gaal coming in, he's brought back a more exciting, a slightly more attractive style than they had under Bert van Marwijk. And this game against Spain sets the tone for the whole group, to use the old narrative, because it's a very, very tight group that if somebody gets a good result from that, whoever wins that, essentially you could see finishing top of the group. And that is massive, because whoever finishes second plays the winner of Group A, which you would imagine is going to be Brazil. So, which is almost a death sentence if it's Holland. So, if they can manage to beat Spain or even avoid defeat, would probably be they could turn it into a very, very positive result for them. So, it's going to be absolutely massive, and it's a fantastic way to kick things off.
You talk about Louis van Gaal coming in and changing the way things were, and maybe there's I don't know. You can let me know if there's a bad taste in the mouth of Dutch fans because of 2010. But part of the change is turnover in this team.
Yeah, definitely. Van Gaal has given so many players their debuts in the national team. It's incredible. And this squad is very, very young, which is why a lot of people don't actually have great expectations. There's a feeling in Holland that they'll be lucky to get out of the group, which is maybe a bit extreme, but I can understand it, because there are so many young players like Patrick Van Aanholt, Bruno Martins Inde, Terence Congolo, and De Vrij, or De Classe. It goes on and on. Wijnaldum. These are really, really young players, but exciting and very, very good players. So there is a feeling that, well, maybe this is a team that's built for the future, that's built to challenge for the Euro 2016 or the next World Cup. But they are, because it's a Dutch team, they are exciting and they are quite good. So there is I think they should be able to get out of the group stages, because Chile and Australia are very, very good teams, but there should be enough in this team to get beyond them. But if you finish second, it's very, very difficult to get past Brazil, I think. The Chileans are the other sort of bogey team in the group. I respect the Australians. I really don't think they're going to be very strong, Peter. I think we can safely say that. And looking at this roster and the youth that's in it, how much then is on the shoulders of players like Van Persie and Klaas van Jan Huntelaar to carry the load? Obviously those are goal scorers. Those are players you need to score goals to win games. So how much of this is on them? And guys, I suppose, like Nigel de Jong and Wesley Sneijder as well. Yeah, it's huge. De Jong is going to probably be a key figure, because he's got something to prove as well. He's become a different player from the sort of dirty and hard tackling player that he was in 2010. I don't think you're going to see him launching a fly kick at Xabi Alonso in the opening game. He's become a bit more of a sensible player. But this spine of De Jong, Wesley Sneijder and Van Persie with Robin as well is going to be massive. And what's strange is that Van Gaal has got his philosophy of playing 4-3-3, but the loss of Kevin Strootman has forced him to change his hand and use a 5-3-2 simply because Strootman is a player that you can't replace. So he's changed to a new 5-3-2, which is a completely untested system in the national team, and it means that there's extra pressure on Van Persie and Robin, because it essentially means that Robin won't be playing out in the wing anymore, where he's most comfortable and where he's most dangerous. So there's a lot of pressure on him to adapt and still link up with everything and work for the team, which I think he will do. I mean, he's a professional, and he says he's used to this kind of system. Wesley Sneijder, the team, this 5-3-2 system kind of accommodates him. It's a lot more comfortable for him than in Euro 2012, because there's a lot more support for him on the wings and in the centre of the park from the midfield. So that's crucial as well. So he has to perform and give his best as well, like he did in 2010, which is going to be massive. So he is an absolutely crucial player in all of this.
Yeah, the injury to Strootman, not only is that sad from the opportunity to see him at this level playing in a World Cup, but you mentioned, okay, so the Dutch have these sort of transcendent winger type players. I mean, these are some of the world's best players, but you can't replace Kevin Strootman. Does that say anything about where Dutch football is right now? Is it just a circumstance? I mean, everybody would love to have one Strootman, not much less a player who could replace him.
Yeah, well, I don't think so. I mean, Strootman is just an excellent central midfielder, box to box, just brilliant. And the only player in this squad that can play a similar kind of style is probably Jonathan de Guzman. And the other one from Holland is maybe Marco van Ginkel, who I think is a massive loss because of his injury that's kept him out for most of the season, and he's only just returned. But I was at the Holland under-21s game during the week, and Van Ginkel is just he's just such a classy player, really dynamic box-to-box midfielder. He's not as athletic or as strong as Strootman, but he has the same kind of ability to tie things together, which is why I think he's such a massive loss for this as well, because they have really only two players of a really high standard in that position that they're without. But I mean, it's not really something that's indicative of where Dutch football is going. I think guys like De Jong and Jordi Clasie are kind of more holding defensive midfielders, but Clasie has got a bit of energy about him and a bit more dig about him as well. That means he could maybe slot into that position as well. But the Dutch kind of excel in making number 10s really these days. I mean, Wesley Sneijder's outstanding, and they've got another one coming through in Jorginho Wijnaldum.
This the Louis van Gaal situation with him taking over at Manchester United, I mean, obviously that's going to happen after the World Cup. Is there any element of distraction either on his part? He certainly is an accomplished coach and a professional, and you wouldn't imagine, but perhaps in the press, any question at all that his mind might not totally be on the Netherlands, considering what he's got in his future?
No, not really, because like you say, he is a professional coach, and this is his second spell as coach of the national team, and his first spell was an absolute failure. Mm-hmm. They failed to qualify for the World Cup, and he's come in, and his goal was to take them to a World Cup, and he's achieved it. But he also, out of sheer arrogance and pride, he thinks that they can go there and win it, essentially, because that's just the way Van Gaal is. He wants to win everything, and so yeah, I mean, I think he's completely focused on it. Apparently, he's left the transfers at Manchester United up to Ed Woodward. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. That's not my place to say. But he seems completely focused on the World Cup and is just out to try and win it.
Who's the number one goalkeeper? I apologize if I haven't been paying attention recently. Who's number one in between the sticks?
No, not many people know this. It will be Jasper Cillessen of Ajax. A lot of people were thinking it was going to be Tim Krul at Newcastle United, but Jasper Cillessen's coming through, replaced Kenneth Vermeer at Ajax, and it's just been really, really good for Ajax. And Van Gaal really, really likes him because he's a typical kind of Ajax goalkeeper, which has more demands than any other club, really. They've got to be technically good and good at moving the ball around as well, and being able to play from the edge of their box and outside it. So Cillessen is enjoying his first full season as the number one goalkeeper at Ajax, and he's been doing really well. So I think he deserves it.
Any concern over lack of experience in that position? I mean, 25 is relatively young for a keeper. It's his first World Cup, not many caps under his belt.
No, not really. I agree with Van Gaal the idea that, well, if you're good enough and you can do the job that's asked of you, then you can go in. You're old enough, and he's put throughout his recent the end of the qualifiers and the recent friendlies, he's shown that he is a good goalkeeper and capable of taking the position. And I think he's probably more deserving of it than Michael Vorm or Tim Krul, to be honest.
If there's a weakness, and yes, okay, we've already established that this team may not have the ceiling of past Dutch teams, and that there is a youth movement here, and that while Van Gaal is confident that it may be a tough ask for Holland to do much more than make it to the round of 16, especially with the way that the tournament lays out if they finish second in the group. But that considered, where are the weaknesses in this team? And certainly, is anybody else outside of Spain capable of attacking those weaknesses? Is Chile a real concern?
Well, the first weakness is really that this is just an unused system. It's untested, and especially at this level, there's a lot of pressure on them. But positional-wise, I would say the left-back position has been for Holland for a while now the main concern. It looks like it will be, well, according to the way they trained today, Daley Blind will be the left back for the game against Ghana, and it should probably for the World Cup as well, which is a bit of a concern because Daley Blind is much better in the centre of midfield, which is where Frank de Boer placed him throughout most of this season at Ajax. And at left back, he's just far too slow and too slow to get back as well. And it's a real worry because it hinders them in some ways and going forward in the way it restricts the width of the team on that side and also leaves them exposed at the back. With three centre backs, it should be enough to cover for them, but that is really the main weakness. And Chile for that reason are a real threat because they're a really good counter-attacking team and just a really dangerous team. And if they break forward with pace, they'll be able to stretch a back line that's probably a bit more exposed if Daley Blind is at left back. And the same goes for the other option is Patrick Van Aanholt. He's the same, although he's a lot quicker and good going forward. Defensively, he's just really quite poor, and that has been a worry for Holland throughout the qualifying campaign, and it is again going into the finals.
The second place team in Group B gets, as you said, Brazil, more than likely. But assuming Brazil wins Group A, and I don't think there's anybody out there putting a bet on them not to win Group A. So that makes it very, very difficult if Holland cannot win the group, and with Spain there, not many people picking them. So what do they need to do? I mean, I know this is a very this is a question that really might not even have an answer, Peter, but what do they need to do to win the group? If they get a point off of Spain, is it possible for them to finish out those other two matches and win the thing on 7 points?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, it's really out of their hands. You are relying on Spain to drop points or really not score as many goals. And in that case, Holland just have to demolish Chile and Australia, which I'm not really sure about. I mean, a lot of people in Holland aren't actually confident that they can beat Australia because Australia, although as you say, they're probably the weakest team in the group. Their strengths really prey on Holland's weaknesses. I mean, they are a really physical team who are good at counter-attacking and good going forward. They're
gonna ugly it up, and that's gonna be a problem for the Dutch.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be praying for Bert van Marwijk to come back and reinstill that fighting spirit in them again.
So it's a tough road, and again, it's the Dutch. There's always an expectation, and there's always a belief that they're capable. But in this tournament, when the Dutch come home, when this team comes back with perhaps a round of 16 exit, how will the people respond? How will the Dutch public treat this, again, as they sort of rationalize where Dutch football is going? Because, this is still a storied country that has yet to win a title.
Yeah, well, I think it will be disappointment at first, but there has to be a realisation that this is quite a young team. with a lot of really young and inexperienced players playing with a new system, missing their best player. So, I mean, the Dutch will moan about it because, well, the Dutch do moan. That's what they do best. But other than that, I mean, I think there will be they are realistic about it, and the feeling that, well, they were never the favourites to do it anyway.
Peter McVitie talking Dutch soccer and certainly the Dutch national team. You can follow him on Twitter at Peter MCVITIE. Please do that. He is an excellent follow. Thank you for your time as always, Peter. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
All right, there he goes. A little bit of Holland national team talk as they get ready for their World Cup campaign. I mean, we are on the doorstep. We are closer every second. We're closer to the World Cup. Yes, I know that's the really stupid thing for me to say. Yes, of course, every second that passes, we're closer to the World Cup. But it feels almost tangible now. It's starting to feel, particularly because these teams are playing these warm-up games. Last night, I watched a little bit of Honduras and Turkey, and I guess Honduras lost that game. They looked good for the first 30 minutes. I didn't watch the whole thing. So I really can't give you a scouting report on Honduras. And as Vince said, maybe Andy Najar is the best player in CONCACAF in 4 years. Maybe he's that guy. But we'll see. Honduras is going to go to the World Cup. What are expectations for Honduras? Probably not all that high. If Honduras managed to get out of their group, that's a massive achievement for them. That would be fantastic. That would be great for CONCACAF. And this is the thing about this tournament, just like every World Cup, is you have to root for those other CONCACAF teams to do well. Americans, you have to root for Mexico to get out of their group. I'm sorry, just the way it is. You have to. Well, you don't have to. But if you want the region to get a boost, you kind of need to. Look at Honduras' group. Switzerland, Ecuador, France, and Honduras. That's rough. Very, very rough for the Hondurans. Probably picked to finish last in that group. Switzerland's stronger than maybe people think. Ecuador, obviously a very good team. And France. All the talent that France brings to the table. Honduras opening up with Ecuador on June 20th. So they have a little bit of time, a little bit extra time maybe to prepare, get themselves ready. Look, it's fun to watch those former MLS players that play for Honduras in that team. It'll be interesting to watch them as well. All right, we've got 12 minutes left in this program. If you want to get in with a phone call, you want to talk about anything we've covered thus far, it is 347-756-6276. We are winding down another week of Soccer Morning, and I'll take that opportunity to remind you that Soccer Morning is listener-supported. Anything at all that you can throw our way to help us keep going is greatly, greatly appreciated. I know some people have been stepping up. Seen some very, very cool tweets from people. Share it. Apparently the hashtag is SMForever, which, as long as we're not throwing an ampersand in the middle there, is fine, I suppose. We don't want to make it an S and M situation. Certainly don't want to do that. SM, the number 4 ever. Sure, why not, right? Soccermorning.com. Big old donate button there at the bottom. Tells you a little bit about how you can contribute and why we need it and everything else. We're getting to the World Cup. We're going to charge forward into the World Cup, and then everything after that, sort of up in the air. We'll talk to you guys about that more. But again, anything you can throw our way at soccermorning.com is greatly appreciated. All right. In the American soccer realm, this news out this morning. Go to empiresoccer.com. Check out our friend Dave Martinez's coverage. New York City FC had a plan to put a training ground at Manhattanville College, which is in Westchester, north of New York City. Pastoral, very rich area, affluent. Lots of houses that are worth multiple millions of dollars. Lots of people with big-time jobs. They had a plan. They were going to go give money, $10 million, to upgrade the facilities at Manhattanville College. They were going to make that their training ground. The college said, yes, please. This will be fantastic. This will help us. This will upgrade all of our sports facilities. We can attract some more students. This is great. They signed a deal. They planned this whole thing out. A couple of people in Westchester, in the area, said, no, thank you. We don't want this. Reports are 3 people filed a lawsuit and a purchase New York EPA. Is that what I'm seeing? Environmental Protection Agency said, nope, we don't want this thing. We don't want the traffic it might cause. We don't want the congestion. We don't want those things here in our town where we're rich and we have big houses. We don't want those things. So we're going to sue. We're going to take you to court over this. They did not win the suit. The suit has not progressed to that point. But the suit will be heard, or was going to be heard. And now New York City FC has backed out of the deal. They said, no, thank you. We can't wait around, because the issue is the lawsuit will take at least a year to settle in whatever way it gets settled. And if a couple of people want to exert their influence and spend the money and hire a lawyer and file a lawsuit, they can drag it out so that it makes no sense for New York City FC to do this. Now, this puts New York City FC in a bind finding a training ground, because they got to get ready. Got less than a year until their first season kicks off. This is all going to happen pretty quickly. Now it's off the table. And I don't know the people who filed the lawsuit. I don't really know the whole story. I don't know their reasonings. I haven't read the lawsuit. I don't want to say that these people did anything necessarily wrong. As Aaron Nobles on Twitter has said, the nerve of some people to give no thought to the good of their community. Shame on them. All right. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's being serious there. I read it sarcastically the first time. Maybe he's being serious. Because but this is one of the things. What's the equation here? How does this calculus work out? What's good for the community? The improvements to Manhattanville College, or keeping out New York City FC and whatever issues they bring to the table? A couple of extra cars. Now, here's the thing, people of this town. What town is this, Trevor? You know the area. Is this Harrison, New York? Purchase, New York. They're all right next to each other, I'm sure. Okay. Sorry. Purchase, New York. People of Purchase, New York. They're talking about signing David Villa. They're talking about signing Frank Lampard. These are all rumors, by the way. No real things sticking yet. They're talking about signing some pretty big names, bringing over some players from Manchester City on loan. These people are going to class up your neighborhood with some pretty slick cars. I mean, let's be honest about this. If David Villa comes to the United States, think he's going to be driving a hoopty up to training in Westchester? No, he's going to drive something nice. It's going to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why wouldn't you want those cars in your neighborhood? People have purchased New York. I'm kidding, of course. Who's on the line with me?
How's it going, Jason? It's Washington.
Washington, from behind the cloak of secrecy.
NYCFC just can't catch a break, man. And I know every time they plan something, it looks like something's going to happen. They get roadblocks.
You know what, Washington? What's funny is if you look at Twitter, there is some shouting for it to happen in here right now. There are some people who do not want to see this team get any breaks whatsoever. They don't want to see this team succeed. They don't want to see this team do well. They don't want to see the owners get anything at all because, let's be fair about this.
Yeah.
Sheikh Mansour, back in his home country, he is part of a government that has some pretty nasty laws.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. But you see, I don't think they're hurting the Sheikh. I don't think they're hurting. They're hurting the New Yorker, the one that's been waiting. I've been waiting since the inception of MLS.
Yeah.
For a New York City team.
You and Trevor.
With all due respect to the Red Bull, even when they were the Metro Stars, I never considered them a New York City team because if you can't get there on the Metro card, it's not New York City.
Yeah.
Right? I've been waiting for a New York City team, and then finally it happens, and it just seems like we're getting smacked left and right.
But that's the city. I mean, that's the way it goes. And I think MLS knew this. And remember, we criticized MLS. I think a lot of people did for handing this team to Mansour and Manchester City and the Yankees ahead of any stadium deal. We said, why are you doing this? Why are you putting the cart before the horse?
I was with you on that, except that at that point I'm like, just let's get it done.
Well, no, I think ultimately they reached critical mass on this. We can't get this stadium done without some of the influence that might be brought to the table by A, Manchester City's money, and B, the New York Yankees' influence. So we need to do this, get this team placed, and then let them work out the red tape. And I'm sure that they prepared the owners of this team for what's going to happen here. That there was going to be a change in there.
I just hope, because I mean, I've heard from Randy Levine that we're considering places outside the boroughs. I mean, the whole point of New York City Football Club is to keep it inside the 5 boroughs. I know we're talking about training ground now, but I'm reverting back to the stadium. They're having trouble with the stadium, and if they continue to have trouble with the stadium, Randy said something about considering someplace other than the 5 boroughs, which I think is dumb.
Well, I mean, that may be posturing. I don't know. I mean, look, there's a new mayor in New York.
Yeah.
And de Blasio has been pretty adamant that this deal that they had previously with Bloomberg wasn't one he was on board with. And
too many tax breaks, according to him.
yeah, so we'll see what happens. I mean, again, everybody says, well, you got the money to pay for it yourself. You don't need tax breaks. That's fine. That's fair. But there's going to have to be work done with the city to get through some of the infrastructure issues, to get some of the land, because there's just not a parcel of land big enough for a 25.
I think that the Blasio and the city are cutting off their nose to spite their face. Everywhere that they've talked about a stadium, Flushing Park, the Bronx, the parking lot, the Bronx, it's places that are desolate, places that can use renovation, and because of whatever their reasons are, they've cut them off. No, you can't have.
It's because stadium deals are poison right now in the current environment that we live in, and for de Blasio, it's something that he can. I'm not saying he doesn't legitimately believe that any concessions at all aren't bad. But clearly, for some politicians, it's possible to posture around a stadium. We're seeing in D.C. right now, as D.C. United's stadium deal gets presented to the city council, you're going to see posturing. You're going to see some people back it, some people not. The area where they want to put that stadium, just like when they were talking about the Nationals baseball stadium, needs it. It needs something. It needs. I mean, look, maybe you could argue, well, look, the power station and the salvage yard bring jobs. Well, okay, fine, but you're also talking about a place with public transportation access, the opportunity to turn it into something better. How far are you willing to go to help the team put a stadium that's going to cost them $150, $200, $300 million in that location? That's the question.
I really hope that they come up with something soon and they're able to, do something. Because I think all of us are at the point that enough already. Enough.
Yeah. Got anything else, Washington? All right, man. Appreciate that. Washington calling from behind the cloak of secrecy, unknown phone number every single time. And I can't just guess it's him. I have to wait for him to identify himself. I can't say, hey, Vince, and then hey, Washington, have him say, hey, Jason. No. Aaron Stoller on Twitter. It's Westchester. They already have those cars. Yes, I know it was a joke. I was kidding. Of course. They're already rolling real deep in Westchester. They don't necessarily need David Villa to show up in the Ferrari to class up the joint. Again, sort of my joke. Just a little bit of tongue in cheek there. I don't really have any dog in any fight when it comes to the training ground for New York City FC. But all of these little things are adding up to some trouble for that club. Which, is it really a club yet? They don't have any players. There's rumors flying around. I like Jason Christ a lot. I like Collier Rain a lot. I want them to succeed. I want this endeavor to succeed for the health of the league. I can't buy the Schadenfreude when it comes to Mansour. I can't be that guy. I can't wish the club ill will and all the people employed by the club ill will because their owner is connected to a regime that does some bad stuff. That's all I'm going to say. Eddie from Brooklyn, you've got like a minute, dude.
That's cool. Now, real quick, everybody talks about how hard it is for them to get a stadium. One point nobody ever brings up is, these places are in desolate areas, and it will help renovate the towns. What it's also going to do is it's going to raise the cost of living for the residents in here.
It's true.
I'm going to tell you right now, people that live in New York, we are tired. My rent goes up ridiculously every single year.
Hey, Eddie, there's this place. It's called the Rest of the Country. I don't know if you heard of it. I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding. I know. I'm New York. I get it. I'm just
no, but I'm telling you, real estate in New York is no joke. And if you're going to raise my rent, I don't want your stadium here because I'm sorry. I'm already paying close. I have a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, and I pay more money than per month than my sister does for a 5-bedroom house.
Where's her house?
This is in Virginia Beach.
Okay, but that's my point. Is that you're paying a premium because of where you live, and
exactly.
You have the option. You have the option to move. I'm not saying you should.
I don't want to move. I've already seen the world. I'm done. I'm here. I'm good.
But you make that decision. You look at the rent. You do a balance. You check. You're looking at this as a balance. I get to live in New York. I get to stay in Brooklyn, but I got to pay this rent. And at some point, maybe the rent goes up too high. But I mean, I get it. Everybody's got concerns. I got to go, Eddie. Appreciate it, man. Everybody's concerned about their little plot, about their lives, about their stuff. This is why people in Westchester complained and filed a lawsuit. They don't want the extra traffic. They don't want the summer camps full of soccer kids. That's their perfect little pastoral plot of land up there in Westchester County. We want to keep it this way. It's their prerogative to go and file a lawsuit. I don't know that they're right. I think it kind of sucks. I think that maybe they're a little short-sighted. sort of, I mean, it's, again, sort of just, and I don't, we want to paint anything any rich people do as sort of always bad. I don't know. It's one of those situations where, again, they are looking after their little locality in their minds. They're justifying that. And there's, there is reason to believe that adding extra elements to any community like that would not endanger, but certainly hurt the quality of living. You pay the money to live there. You want it to stay the way it was when you paid money to live there. It's the thing to consider. All right. We are done. A week of shows in the books. Thank you very much for listening to Soccer Morning. Please go to soccermorning.com and consider donating to the show. Every little bit of support you give is helpful. There's a poll out there on the Soccer Morning Twitter account. We'll share it again. Who do you want to co-host the show? Who do you want Auntie to pay or to contribute so that somebody else can host the show? I didn't say that correctly at all, but you get what I'm saying. Go vote in the poll. Apparently Vince in Toronto is leading the poll right now. We could do that. A show full of oh hey Jasons. It'd be great. Thank you very much to Dave Zirin. Thank you very much to Peter McVitie. We will talk to you guys on Monday. Enjoy your soccer. There's games happening. There's warm-up games. There's MLS. We didn't even touch on MLS today. I can't fit it all in. See you Monday. Bye.